Hello and welcome to Silhouettes and Hamilton Knows What He Did. Now, the first part of this is admittedly a bit easier to explain than the second part, so we'll start with that. Silhouette portraiture was very popular in the olden days before selfies because, compared to other types of portraiture, it was faster, cheaper, and didn't use lead paints that put the artist at risk of going full Van Gogh in later life. We'll also be covering a little bit of Revolutionary War trivia since it's getting close to the 4th of July. There are many myths surrounding the Revolutionary era, but perhaps the biggest myth is that most of the colonists wanted independence. In reality, at least 1 in 5 were loyalists, meaning they wanted to just stay a British colony, and only about 40% called themselves patriots, meaning that for every soldier trudging barefoot through the snow at Valley Forge, there was statistically at least another guy at home going, it'll probably blow over. Another common myth is the Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th. In fact, it was approved July 2nd and wasn't signed until August due to the length of time it took everyone to ride on horseback from their estate, hamlet, shire, what have you. July 4th stands for more than just people's ability to forget important dates, however, as 3 of the first U.S. presidents died on July 4th, lending it a bit of morbid significance. 2 of these men, famous frenemies Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, are probably the best known. Now, I call them frenemies not just because it's a ridiculous word, fun to say, but also because they greatly respected each other in spite of almost never agreeing on anything. Adams was a Federalist, meaning he supported a stronger central government, whereas Jefferson was an anti-Federalist and wanted a society of only small farms. Adams didn't own slaves and stood by the courage of his convictions in this regard, whereas Jefferson was conflicted. On the one hand, he knew that slavery was fundamentally evil and would eventually tear the nation apart, but on the other hand, it was really, really hot out to do yard work. This is actually taken from a letter written by Jefferson. Jefferson wasn't the only notable figure conflicted about slavery, however. George Washington grappled throughout his life with this issue, finally freeing his slaves in his will. It should be mentioned, however, that due to the general terribleness of Southern law at this time, this wasn't actually entirely possible. There were doubtless many factors in his decision, but perhaps one of the lesser-known ones was a young poet named Phyllis Wheatley, portrayed here with her name wrongly spelled with a Y instead of an I, showing my poetic ability. Although enslaved since she was 7, she became a celebrated poet admired even by Washington himself, a really remarkable feat in an era when most slaves were forbidden from even learning to read. It may seem odd that Wheatley would appeal to Washington's humanity so strongly, and really so poignantly demonstrate the injustice of slavery in an era when many were so callous, but it's important to remember that Washington did have a softer side. He once returned the runaway terrier of a sworn enemy, the British General Howe, simply because he loved dogs, which, although a cute story, is nothing compared to the escapades of Burr. Okay, I know that was a bit of an abrupt transition, but not even a brief doodle summary of this era would be complete without mentioning one of the greatest passive-aggressive conflicts in human history. Alexander Hamilton and Burr had long been enemies, mainly because Burr kept trying to get various parts of the U.S. to secede so he could rule over them as their feudal lord. Things got nastier than usual, however, when Hamilton allegedly said something still more despicable about Burr at a dinner party. In a series of venomous letters well worth trying over to the National Archives website for, Hamilton and Burr bickered endlessly but never directly stated what Burr had done that was still more despicable than, say, what had gotten him tried for treason. Now, there are many theories about this, including some legitimate ones that don't involve aliens, but perhaps the saddest is it was actually nothing at all, but rather a long, drawn-out case of you know what you did, because each man thought the other was hiding something. Nevertheless, one fateful day, Burr and Hamilton rolled across the Hudson in separate tiny rowboats, presumably glaring at each other in an unbroken stare the whole time. And then, in the storied tradition of Code Duello and of their forefathers, Burr straight up murdered Alexander Hamilton, meaning we have once again reached a downer ending.